Today, we are going way, way back to a story you've probably never heard. It's about how humanity solved a massive information crisis thousands of years before anyone even thought about inventing writing. This is the story of the birth of data itself.
So let me just ask you this. Could you run an entire city, all its trade, its people, its resources, using nothing but your brain? I mean, no spreadsheets, no notebooks, not even a sticky note. Sounds completely impossible, right? Well, that's the exact wall our ancestors hit about 6,000 years ago.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the late Neolithic period, around 4000 BCE. For the very first time, human societies are getting so big, so complex, that the human brain, our original hard drive, just couldn't keep up anymore. They were staring down a full-blown data crisis.
And you can just imagine the chaos, right? All of a sudden, you've got huge surpluses of grain to manage, you've got trade routes stretching for miles and miles, you've got these massive public works projects with thousands of workers to keep track of, not to mention land ownership, temple offerings, herd sizes. Memory alone just wasn't going to cut it anymore. It was no longer a reliable tool.
So what do you do when your whole society's needs totally outgrow your biological memory? Well, you do what humans do best. You invent something new. You invent a new technology. And that technology was proto-writing, a really brilliant solution that popped up to solve this exact data problem. Now, this is really important to understand. Proto-writing isn't writing like we think of it. Not at all. It was a system of symbols, yeah, but they were used to record things and ideas. Stuff like 3 jars of oil or 5 sheep. But it couldn't capture the little details of spoken language, like grammar, or, say, tell a story. This was a tool for accounting, not for poetry. And the difference is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. Proto-writing is what you use to create an inventory list. True writing is what you use to create, say, a historical chronicle. One is for counting your stuff, the other is for telling stories and recording exactly what someone said. And that distinction is everything. So to really see how this tech evolved, we can zoom in on ancient Mesopotamia. It was basically an innovation lab for record keeping. And lucky for us, they left behind this incredible archaeological record that shows us the whole process, step by step. And this process is just fascinating. So first, you have these simple little 3D clay tokens. A cone might mean grain, a sphere might mean oil. Then you seal those tokens inside a hollow clay ball called a bulla to create a secure record. It's basically an ancient tamper-proof zip file. The next step, though, that was a stroke of genius. They started pressing the tokens onto the outside of the ball before they sealed it. And that, right there, led to the final aha moment. Wait a second, why do we need the tokens inside at all? All we really need are the 2D impressions on a flat piece of clay. And just like that, boom, the world's first data tablet was born. But here's the thing, this wasn't just happening in Mesopotamia. What's so amazing is that this was an idea whose time had come. All around the world, other societies facing these same pressures of complexity were independently dreaming up really similar solutions. I mean, from China to the Balkans all the way to Egypt and Iran, different cultures were developing their own unique systems of symbolic record keeping. It was like a true global awakening, a kind of convergent evolution of information technology, all driven by this universal need to manage a more complex world. So, what was the real impact of this invention? I mean, what's the big deal? To put it simply, it completely rewired human society. This wasn't just about counting sheep anymore. This was about building a brand new world. The best way to think about it is like a new operating system for civilization. For the first time, you could have ledgers to track wealth with perfect accuracy. You could have standardized laws that applied to everybody. You could organize these huge public projects with detailed worker rosters. But maybe the most important thing of all, it created an institutional memory, a database that could exist way beyond the lifetime of any single person.
And with this new technology came a brand new job description, the scribe. And these people weren't just writers. They were the world's very first professional class dedicated to information. They were the original data analysts, the keepers of this new externalized memory. It's really hard to overstate just how big of a shift this was. For the first time ever, our ability to communicate, to build upon knowledge, was no longer trapped by the faulty, limited space inside our own heads. Human communication literally escaped the prison of memory.
And that allowed knowledge and culture to pile up on a scale humanity had never, ever seen before. And you can see the direct impact this had on the sheer scale of human cooperation. Look, oral tradition is fantastic for coordinating small groups, like villages. But with proto-writing, you can suddenly organize whole towns and cities. And from there, it's a pretty straight line to true writing, which lets you coordinate vast, sprawling empires. Each step is just a massive leap forward. And this right here is why proto-writing is so critical. It's the link, it's the hinge point between our deep, unrecorded past and our documented present. It is the invention that makes history itself even possible. It's the moment we started writing our story down, not in words, but in data.
And that brings us to one last thought. The very first things that humanity chose to record for all time, they weren't grand poems or epic myths or sacred prayers. They were receipts, they were inventories, they were lists of rations. So I'll just leave you with this question. What does it tell us about the nature of civilization that its very foundation was built not on poetry, but on accounting? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.